The Progressive Liberal Party leader says his parliamentary privilege has been breached. Tourism Minister moving debate on a civil aviation bill, and a fender bender turns deadly. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lissy Bastian with your JCN News for this Wednesday, February 3rd. Thanks for staying with us. Opposition leader Philip Davis insisting that his parliamentary privilege has been breached after Attorney General Carl Bethel, in a statement over the weekend, said that Mr. Davis and former Deputy House Speaker Dion Smith's allegations of criminality about Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis and former Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Peter Turnquest leaves both Davis and Smith exposed to possible criminal liability. The Progressive Liberal Party leader presenting as much in a letter to House Speaker Halson Moutry in this morning's session of the House. On January 28th, Mr. Davis released a statement accusing the Prime Minister of breaching the law under the emergency regulations, adding that emergency orders require the Prime Minister to lay a report before Parliament detailing expenditures within 6 weeks of the expiration of a proclamation of emergency. Mr. Smith, also in a separate statement classified as an opinion, called for the Prime Minister's resignation over what he called a breach of the emergency regulations. Well, Mr. Davis says he intends to refer this matter to the Committee of Privilege.
I feel duty bound to refer this matter to the said committee because, as an attorney and a member of the Bahamas Bar Association, I stand on judicial precedent that a considered legal opinion in the course of interpreting the law by an officer of the court cannot be characterized as criminal libel. Further, as a duly elected member of the House of Assembly, the language, tone, and tenor of the statement referenced above and enclosed amount to a breach of my parliamentary privilege. For your ease of reference, please see below an excerpt from the statement, specifically the 3rd, 4th, and 5th paragraph of the press release, that constitute, in my considered view, this threat of my parliamentary privilege.
Quoting German non-governmental organization Transparency International, Mr. Davis says that the organization warned that the pandemic has brought about a corruption crisis along with the economic and health crisis, adding that this is his and a number of Bahamians' concern. On a point of order, Works Minister Desmond Bannister explains what the Attorney General meant in his statement.
Mr. Speaker, what the Attorney General is saying is that if there had been an order, had there been an order in place under subsection 1, then there would have been an obligation under subsection 2.
House Speaker Halson Moutry says he's minded to turn Mr. Davis's concerns to the Committee of Privilege. The Bahamas aviation industry is about to undergo some major changes over the next 10 months, leading up to the next audit by an international aviation regulator. Aviation Minister Dionisio D. Aguilar revealing as much as parliamentarians debated a compendium of bills in the House of Assembly this morning. Our Dorino Saunders has more.
Lots of big changes coming for the Bahamas civil aviation industry after a compendium of 3 bills for new legislation was tabled in the House of Assembly on Wednesday morning. Dionisio D. Aguilar, Minister of Tourism and Aviation, began debate on the Civil Aviation Authority Bill 2021, the Civil Aviation Bill 2021, and the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Bill 2021. According to D. Aguilar, the Bahamas has been losing ground in the civil aviation industry. He said the most recent audit cited the local aviation model as not up to standard. This, according to D. Aguilar, must change.
The 2017 ICAO Safety Oversight Audit, first and foremost, revealed that the Bahamas' aviation legislation and the Bahamas civil aviation structure had become outdated, was now non-compliant, and unable to keep up with the ever-evolving standards and recommended practices, SARPs, outlined in the UN Convention on International Civil Aviation and its annexes. The audit also revealed that although the Bahamas had aviation laws and regulations specifically outlined in the Civil Aviation Act 2016 and its accompanying regulations, there was woefully inadequate proof that these laws and regulations were being followed or enforced.
The Aguilar revealed that the Bahamas Civil Aviation rating has dropped from 56.98 to a very low 31.98. He said the new laws are expected to help the country get a much improved score at the next audit, scheduled for November 2021, to see if identified inefficiencies have been satisfactorily resolved. The Aguilar said the government has taken a number of major steps towards attaining a better score following the next audit.
The result of the low audit score and the accompanying report, the Bahamas Civil Aviation Authority engaged in the development and execution of plans to fix the safety deficiencies that were identified, hired global industry expert consultants, and conducted broad domestic industry and stakeholder consultation, which resulted in the drafting of the proposed bills being debated here today.
Another recommendation by ICAO had to do with the structure of the Air Traffic Controllers Division. The Aguilar said those recommendations have been heard and the necessary steps have been taken.
The second major structural change that these three bills are seeking to achieve is to separate the provision of air navigation services by the air traffic controllers, who are currently embedded in the Civil Aviation Authority as the Bahamas Air Navigation Services Department, into their own authority. The ICAO auditors pointed out that you cannot have a service provider, i.e. the air traffic controllers, in the same entity as the regulator. That is a conflict.
Going forward, the air traffic controllers will be detached from the Civil Aviation Authority. Other changes and improvements under the new laws include a new air traffic registry, timely regulations and amendments processes, establishment of a search and rescue coordination center, and improvements on collecting air navigation fees. Jerino Saunders for JCN News.
Shifting gears, the country recording homicide number 12 according to JCN's records, as police are now investigating a traffic accident that turned deadly, the result of one driver being stabbed about the body. Our Laurencia Smith was on the scene last night and filed this report.
A fender bender here in the capital last night turned deadly after the persons involved in the accident got into a physical altercation, which resulted in one of them being stabbed. Police now investigating a traffic accident and the country's latest homicide. According to police, shortly after 6 p.m., they received reports of a stabbing incident at the intersection of 5th Street and Palm Tree Avenue. Here's Press Liaison Officer Assistant Superintendent of Police Audley Peters with more details.
Officers responded, and on their arrival, they met a male lying on the ground, unresponsive. Emergency medical services were summoned. The technician, after their examination of the body, pronounced it lifeless. Initial investigation into this matter is that a vehicular accident occurred at the intersection involving two vehicles. Occupants of those vehicles got into an altercation and resulted in one of the males being stabbed, and he succumbed to his injuries on scene. Majesty's coroner visited the scene and was appraised of the facts.
When JCN reporters arrived on the scene, they met two vehicles believed to be involved in the accident. One of the vehicles was at the intersection of 5th Street and Palm Tree Avenue. ASP Peters could not give an age of the victim and noted that no one was in custody at this time. He also informed reporters that police are looking for multiple persons. However, ASP Peters says that he's confident that the matter will come to a close. He sends this message to the public.
To motorists, to exercise courtesy and follow the protocols that they would have learned in driving school as it relates to accidents. An accident is simply an accident. There's no need to be involved in physical altercations with anyone. Once you have all your required documents, the permission to be on the road, to use the road, those things are suffice, because things could be replaced, but not lives, and your freedom could be taken from you for decisions that are made without rationale.
Police are appealing to members of the public who may have any information to please contact the police at 502-991 or 2. I'm Laurencia Smith for JCN News.
In mid-January, Commissioner of Police Paul Rule addressed the media at his annual press briefing, giving statistics regarding domestic matters. Well, at the start of this week, the Royal Bahamas Police Force engaged in a 3-day domestic violence training seminar for police officers. Commissioner Rule brought opening remarks at the ceremony. He told officers that while the decrease is welcomed, there is still much more to be done. Our Tyler Simonet has more on this story.
Domestic violence and the protection of persons at risk of harm is the priority of Commissioner of Police Paul Rule's policing plan, which is why the Royal Bahamas Police Force held a domestic violence seminar yesterday in an attempt to sensitize police officers when dealing with domestic matters. Commissioner Rule gave the opening remarks for the seminar.
Officers, domestic violence is not prejudice to age. It's not prejudice to religion, nor race, nor sexual orientation or gender. It can happen to anyone, anywhere, and at any time. It does not respect a person's lot in life, his education, or socioeconomic status. It occurs within a vast scope of relationships, whether it be marriages, couples living together, dating, or between family members. Our role as a law enforcement organization is to provide efficient, professional, and confidential services to protect all victims of domestic or intimate partner violence.
Commissioner Rule also outlined to officers what was needed in order to protect people at risk of harm and the RBPF strategy, which is crucial to achieving the goal to address all forms of domestic violence and gender-based violence issues.
We look for a decrease in gender-based violence, exploitation, and abusive crimes against persons. Privacy and the dignity of sexual assault victims will be preserved. Increases in informational tips from the public to solve and/or prevent sexual exploitation and abuse. Generate greater awareness among members of the public on sexual exploitation and abuse. Reduction of trafficking in persons for sexual, economic exploitation, and greater participation in gender-based violence, exploitation, and abuse reduction seminars, as we're doing here today.
The Commissioner added that he has made a commitment to empower at-risk, vulnerable, and marginalized people and victims of gender-based violence, exploitation, or abuse. He urges officers to become familiar with this policing plan. According to Rule, domestic-related matters decreased by 39% from 3,902 in 2019 to 2,432 in 2020. He says that while the decrease is welcome, there is still much to be done. For JCN News, I'm Tyler Simonet.
You're watching JCN News. When we return, both the Free National Movement and the Progressive Liberal Party introducing candidates for the next general election, and a fallen doctor honored. Stay with us.